And I think we are live. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. We are recording this moments after the India squad for the T20 World Cup has been announced. The Asia Cup concluded yesterday. I'm joined by Ashwin. Ashwin, how are you doing this fine Monday morning, your time?
I'm good, man. I thought we were expecting a squad release now, and we got the the T20 World Cup squad. What about 30 minutes ago at this point? So it's exciting. I mean, it's amazing how the news cycles move. Like 6 days ago, I was depressed India hadn't made the Asia Cup final. Then, of course, as we'll talk, the king came back, came roaring back, even though the match didn't matter. Then Sri Lanka ended up victorious. Congratulations to Sri Lanka fans. And now the T20 squad is out. So the loss that led us to not making the final is so far back in my memory now. I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, it's a bit insane. I mean, when you guys recorded last week, I think Varun was adamant that India would be playing Pakistan in the final. Of course, India lost to Sri Lanka on Tuesday, which should have been a game that Indian fans would have backed them to win. That then left a slightly circuitous path for India to make the final, with Pakistan having to lose to Afghanistan and Pakistan having to lose to Sri Lanka. One of those two things happened, which was Pakistan losing to Sri Lanka, and it was only Naseem Shah's two sixes that ensured that Pakistan made the final. But I don't want to get into too much non-India chat. There's a lot to chat about the India stuff today. I don't want to get into Afghanistan fighting with the Pakistan players. I think Asif Ali had a bit of a run in. I don't want to get into Indian fans being denied entry into the final, which is like it sounds completely crazy. I don't want to get into the two day 30-minute test match that England played against South Africa. What I want to get into, Ashwin, and we're going to run this slightly differently from usual. Of course, congratulations to Pakistan, Sri Lankan fans
You almost
for
said it.
winning the
Almost.
Asia Cup. Well, Pakistan won the toss, right? So I mean, I kind of clocked out then, but
This was the only. This was the only match excluding the Hong Kong matches. I guess no. India also won against Afghanistan batting first. So there was two matches plus the two Hong Kong matches where the team batting first won, and of course one was India Afghanistan. One was the final, and the rest of it was a toss. The Asia Cup was about a flip of a coin almost. But anyway, that seems like a controversial take. DJ, let's keep going.
yeah, the Tossia Cup. But of course, Sri Lanka later came on and said that they'd watched CSK win the IPL in 2021 in Dubai, and therefore they were inspired. Again, I don't want to get into that because there's so much to talk about this week. It sounds like a bit of a crazy week in terms of cricketing action. The Indian women have played England as well. There was a bit of drama there as well, where Harmanpreet was not happy with the conditions. Radha Yadav went off with a shoulder injury. But maybe all of that for another day. Today, the big news is India's T20 squad has been announced. And Ashwin, I want to run through this a little bit differently from usual. I want to talk about the people who made the squad, and I want to make the people who we think could have made the squad but didn't, right? So I'm going to start. I'm looking at the squad. I'm going to start right from the top, Ashwin, and Rohit Sharma. There was no doubt that Rohit Sharma was going to make the squad. There was no doubt he was going to be captain. I want you to talk about what you feel about his form. Did that 72 or 41 against Sri Lanka fill you with the confidence that Rohit is the best choice for opener at this T20 World Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I don't argue that one. I think he's the skipper. They've invested in him. He's probably still, if not the biggest one of India's biggest six hitters. And so when he's on point, he can hit the ball a long way, which is going to really matter in Australia. So I, yeah, I've no question about Rohit actually. No debate even needed.
Were you happy with his captaincy against Sri Lanka? He didn't bowl Huda, which we'll come to later. But I mean, are you happy with his captaincy, his responses in the press about how they're learning from every game, and this is all a trial and run for the T20 World Cup, which it is. But there
Yeah,
was
I
some
mean,
criticism around his relaxed attitude.
so a couple of thoughts, right? One, he did win. How many was it? You'll remember 13 in a row
Yeah,
T20s
yeah,
under his
yeah.
captaincy before he lost the one. Now you can argue it's the one that counted, but I don't want to write off the ones before. I he's a lot more kind of lighthearted, uh, just jovial, if you will, in his press conferences, which I think is fine for me as a skipper. I mean, we know all our listeners know we are fans of Virat. I was personally a fan of Virat, the captain. I liked the intensity, but I have nothing against Rohit. So yeah, a couple of questionable decisions at some points. You brought in Huda, who could bowl, he didn't bowl him. Nothing close to enough to say we should change our captain yet again. So no question for me.
And he seemed to have struck a bit of form. Although India had lost two early wickets, he did smash the ball against Sri Lanka, and it was disappointing to end on the losing side of that one. There was that moment with Arshdeep as well, which has made its round on social media, probably edited a little bit, taken a little bit out of context. But I guess you're happy enough with Rohit on the field as well. You saw him react to Arshdeep's dropped catch as well.
Yeah, he wears his heart on his sleeve, right? So when he's
Well, he
relaxed
doesn't.
and
I mean, not as much as Kohli did,
yeah,
right?
but
So
Kohli would
that's
have
the
yelled
whole
at
like,
Arshdeep too, or like
yeah,
would have screamed in
fair
anger.
enough.
So like I don't, yeah, dude, we got to move on. I don't think like I think it's a bit silly that we're spending time talking about Rohit. Like, are you saying you're not saying we should have picked a different captain
No,
after 6 months
no,
of him?
of course not. But I've
Yes,
got
yeah.
to
So let's
ask
keep
the
going.
questions, right? Do
Yeah.
the job. Anyway, second. Now this is more interesting. This is KL Rahul, right? Um, much maligned, asked whether Kohli will be opening the batting in the T20 World Cup, to which he replied in the press conference, "So, मैं बाहर बैठ जाऊं? Which is, should I sit out?" Which is, I mean, it is a pretty funny question, but he is Ashwin, the vice captain, and it was interesting that India picked him to captain um, against Afghanistan. He got runs against Afghanistan, 60, so he's showing glimpses of form. He hit a few big ones. Of course, there was criticism against the innings that he played against Pakistan, and he didn't do well against Sri Lanka either. But was there a case to have made Hardik Pandya, who's a certainty in the squad, Ashwin, the vice captain instead of KL Rahul? Because there may be a place where Kohli and Rohit open and Rahul might have to sit out. We've had the same issue with Rahane in the test game, so you don't want to be dropping your vice captain, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can. I don't think they were going to. I've said this a few times now, but I would have liked to see Rahul in the squad, but not necessarily vice captain. I don't think that's kind of how they thought about it, how the selectors approached it. I do think all of these questions will come up after the World Cup. All of them will, right? Like, so that from a timing standpoint, whether it's is Rohit going to continue to captain? Should Kohli continue to play all three formats? Will what role does Rahul play? How do Kishan and some of these guys factor into the future setup? What role does Deepak Huda play? All of these come up after the World Cup. I think I've been saying for a while. I think pretty clearly the selectors, right or wrong, I don't know if I agree with it, but the selectors have had a very clear ingoing point of view that they didn't want to mess around with too much before the World Cup, and that I mean that could hurt us. But I think that'll be the lesson that's needed.
Fair enough. So does that then put the seal on our openers, Ashwin, Rohit and Rahul? And with that, number three, Virat Kohli, who scored 100 while opening. And it was what I mean, we would have literally spent the entire episode talking about Virat Kohli's 100, right? If the squad hadn't released.
Yeah, I mean yes. So lots to uncover there. I do think Rohit and Rahul will open for the few T20s we have before the World Cup, and then maybe early stages. But I do think they will be agile and flex around if Rahul keeps playing. Look, we haven't yet talked about the final, right? But of the Asia Cup, and I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. But if you look at the chase that Pakistan had to put in, and I'm drawing this parallel, but Mohammad Rizwan made 55, I think, of 49 balls, right? He ends up being the highest scorer in the Asia Cup with 281 runs. He played a brilliant knock against India, especially when his partners on the other side weren't playing well. But he made 281 runs at a strike rate of 117. And I think that's the KL Rahul model, if you will, right? Bat up top, don't worry, strike rate doesn't matter. It's something he said that he will probably regret for the rest of his life. But so I mean, I think you're seeing it play out that in the modern T20 game, the guy who, unless you have such an explosive big hitting side the rest of the way, which we don't, right? We have a good balance, but we don't have six big English six hitters or West Indian six hitters, etc. I Anyway, the Rizwan model the Rizwan Rahul model, if you call it. I mean, Rahul was still at the end of the
The
tournament
double
striking at
R.
122. He struck at 122. It's just not quite good enough. So all that to say, I think Rahul and Rohit will open. I don't know if that'll last forever. I think they'll start, and then we'll see. And Virat at three could clearly become Virat the opener.
Double R model. And there was a great tweet which said that Rizwan is following the KL Rahul model, to which the response was, which it was a gem. At least Rahul leaves 119 balls for his other batsmen.
Ouch.
It's-
Ouch.
but
DJ,
dude,
before we keep moving, we're getting some comments here.
King Kohli,
Yeah.
why haven't
Should
you
we talk
addressed
about it?
that?
I mean, I was waiting for
I'm
you. You were
still
engrossed.
buzzing.
It is unbelievable. Man, it was just, I don't even know how, I don't think we can do it justice when we talk about it, but 122 off 61 balls brings up the century with a six. Batting opening. And let's be clear, the record books may look back and say Afghanistan was not the best side from a ranking standpoint.
I
But let's
mean,
be
they were
clear, they had
emotionally drained as well
but
after
they
that
had an
Pakistan loss, right?
unbelievable Asia Cup with the ball, right? Like they just, yes, their batting fell short a couple of times, and they were emotionally drained after a
And physically drained.
late.
They played back to back games in the heat, right? So
Sure, there's a lot of disclaimers, but Afghanistan is a good quality side with the ball. They are not the minnows they were, call it 10, 12 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. And I think if you told me after 1,000 and something day drought,
one
Kohli was
zero
going to
two one.
1,021 day drought, Kohli was going to pick up his century, and it was
With
going to be in
it,
a T20, I would have laughed at you.
It's first T20 100.
Right? T20 I 100. Yeah. Like
Yeah, T20 I 100. Yeah.
if you told me that it would have been after T20, I would have just laughed. I said, of course not. He's going to make a test century. Definitely going to make an ODI century. But man, just seeing his face, he was laughing, he was smiling, and then he came back out and hit a couple more boundaries after he got to the milestone. It was a great, just such a great moment. I've watched the
Just
highlights about 6 times.
Yeah, and just that smile that he had on his face. We've seen the Kohli celebrations where he's pumped up, he's abusing his first ever Test 100. I remember at Adelaide, and that was just you can barely watch it because it's full of expletives constantly. Where he hits whenever he's, I mean, like there's the Birmingham Edgbaston 100 that he got against England, the 149, which was his first in England. This somehow felt almost as momentous as that because you've got all these counters talking about 1021 days, and like, I mean, of course there's a pandemic in the midst of that, and it's not like he hasn't scored any runs, but I think a billion people breathed the collective sigh of relief after that 100. Yes, he was dropped, but who isn't dropped? He was dropped in that 149 as well, so what? um it may not be the greatest 100 he scored, it may not be the worst 100 he scored, but I think in the context of the week that Indian fans had almost, well, we were eliminated from the Asia Cup by then with those two Naseem Shah fluke sixes. I mean, they were, man, like they were like the Shahid Afridi sixes back in the day, which went for six. But we were eliminated, and if we needed something to lift us, it had to be a King Kohli 100. And I mean, it was the same day the Queen unfortunately passed away. Return of the King was trending. It was all quite surreal, really, and it was. I think it was cathartic for so many fans that have backed him through the kind of lean patch he's had. During this podcast, there were entire series we would just gloss over Kohli saying, yeah, he's going to score 200s. Let's move on to Rahane or Pujara, should he be in the team or whatever. This was King Kohli at his finest, imperious best, and it's great news for Indian fans. So super excited about that, man. And he's going to bat three, right, for India. He has to bat three for India at the World Cup.
Yeah,
No,
for
no
sure he
questions
is.
asked.
For sure he is. I think I would be a little remiss if I didn't. I'm trying to pull it up now. Like Virat sort of, not Virat. Somebody else said it, but like he was making 50s and 60s, right? He scored five half centuries out of 9 innings in 2020 in ODIs. He scored 2 half centuries in 3 innings in 2021 in ODIs. He scored 2 and 8 in 2022, right? Like I. I'm not saying the century wasn't cathartic. I just think it's amazing how he set the century as the benchmark and the yardstick for success. He wasn't playing bad cricket. It's just that he set his bar so unbelievably high that we got used to it. So anyway, answer to your question, he bats three for India. No question.
Yeah, Ricky Ponting, 7100s,
Yeah.
the fastest ever to get to that landmark as well.
And
I
it took
mean,
him almost 3 years since
yeah,
number 70.
absolutely amazing. And those celebrations were great. He acknowledged his wife, acknowledged his daughter. It was just, I mean, I think I could go on forever, but we're not going to get through the rest of the squad if we keep talking about King Kohli. Congratulations to him, man. Like that's literally all I can say at this stage. It was a really happy day. Surya Kumar Yadav next, boss. Bats four.
Yeah, I mean, he had I guess, sort of up and down. I'm trying to pull up the stats while we talk. He played 5 innings, made
Yeah,
139
he didn't really take
runs.
off against Sri Lanka, and that was disappointing because with him having played the supporting role to Rohit, he got a 50, I think 60 runs against Hong Kong. What I mean,
Yeah.
not sure we would count those as
I mean, it
top
counts, but
notch
yes,
runs,
he
right?
wasn't able
Yeah,
to accelerate against Sri Lanka. Made 30 odd at a run of ball, I think 34. And yeah, it just, I still, the problem with a series like this is it's not, it might be just about enough time for you to cement a spot. It's not quite enough time for you to get dropped. And we'll talk about the bowlers a little, but playing what, 5 matches in the Asia Cup isn't necessarily on its own. Playing in the UAE versus playing in Australia and all these things aren't enough to get dropped. So I don't think Sky has, after the magnificent, call it, 3 years he's had,
yeah.
I don't think he's done anything to lose his spot in this format.
Yeah,
So
he's
he played
brilliant.
four.
He's brilliant in the field as well. He's fit enough that he's batting well. He hits the ball all over the place. You saw even Kohli was in awe of some of those shots that he was pulling off against Hong Kong. And I mean, for me, he's an absolute certainty. He should bat at number 4 for India. But then that leaves the question: you've already got four, like you've got four right-handers there. With Jadeja ruled out of the World Cup, man, that's a huge blow for India. He had a skateboarding, skiing
Is
in
that
the
what it was?
UAE.
I didn't
He
actually
had
look what it was. I don't
he
think you
hurt
can ski,
himself
but
on some team building exercise. His knee was twisted. Now he needs he's out. He's had a op and he's out. And I mean, he's someone who could have come up the order and batted 4 if needed. But his exclusion, Akshar is a good cricketer, probably the perfect replacement for him, and we can talk about that later. But he doesn't have the class that Jadeja has with the bat. And so, Ashwin, is that why the selectors have gone for our boy Rishabh Rajendra Pant in the squad?
yeah, undoubtedly, right? I think we will talk separately, but Dinesh Karthik got the call up for the squad, and then he tweeted saying, "Dreams do come true," which I thought was a really great moment.
Yeah, it
Like,
was
good to
cute.
see. But of course, I think Rishabh Pant is on the fringe. We love him. We know that you guys know we're big fans, but he hasn't delivered to his potential in the T20I format. And so I think if he was a right-hander, I asked myself, if he was right-handed, would he have made the squad? And I think the answer right now is no. Which again is a
Probably. Yeah,
sad
you're right.
state.
You're right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I think
Samson
that,
didn't make the squad, right?
yeah.
They've got
So
comparable T20I stats. Probably Samson's got slightly better stats
yeah.
than Rishabh.
Now, one of the reasons I think India got outplayed by Pakistan in that second match, was that they had a better balance of righties and lefties, and even at this level, it did mess up our quicks. Right, our Sheep was bowling wides. Was it Bishnoi was struggling a little bit to adapt every time they took a single from a righty to lefty. So it sounds trivial, but it matters, and so I understand the thought process.
But also for me, the pick of Rishabh is a he's batted in Australia. He's done well in Australia. He's done 2 tours down under. Remember, he knows the ground. He knows the pitches. He's done well on them. Two, when we won the 2007 World Cup, who did he have in that? He had Dhoni and he had and Yuvraj. He had that X factor who can just take off, man. Like there's the argument. Does Rishabh Pant deserve his spot in the ODI setup either? He proved that with the Hardik Pandya partnership in England, right? And so it's those X factor players that win you these tournaments. And for me, I mean, if you want to compare the two eras, I suppose Pandya is more like the Yuvraj, whereas Pant is more like the Dhoni in that lineup, right? And it's left hand, right hand. They kind of bat in that middle order. They can stabilize if they need to. They can explode if they need to. And remember, Rishabh Pant has the fastest ever T20 domestic century by an Indian. It's not like he can't play the game, right?
Yeah,
So
he's unbelievable, right? He's an unbelievable cricketer, no question. But he has not, on its own, justified his spot at the T20I side. I think you're right. They leaned in, A, saying lefty, especially with Jadeja out, and B, saying he is that kind of impact cricketer, the X factor kind of guy, like you called
yeah.
it. So I agree. I think all those reasons worked for him. I don't know if he will start over DK. I think he probably will again, but largely because of him being a lefty. And I don't. at some point, if he doesn't continues to underperform, the selectors and skipper will say, it's fine. We'll go with six righties in the top order, just because we need to pick our best batters.
Let's pick up on the DK point, right, very quickly, because DK is a keeper. He is a specialist finisher. Ashwin, both the games that we lost, put on 181, 170 odd. That finishing kick just did not come. Dinesh Karthik like spent more time bowling in this tournament than batting. I mean, what were we doing? What was the
Yeah.
logic to that?
You're talking about not playing him, or you're
Yeah,
saying,
we didn't play him. We
yeah,
played him one game, right?
yeah,
And then he sat out
yeah. I
because
mean, I think
Jadeja
it,
got injured. And I
I
mean,
think we're living this live, and you see some of the YouTube comments coming in too. But like, with this, you have your top four basically nailed down, and you can argue Rahul and stuff, but Rohit, Rahul, Virat, and Sky, and then you are going to play Hardik, who we haven't talked yet, and then you get kind of caught in this. Okay, where do you go next? If you go with DK, then you've got six straight righties. If you go with Pant, then DK either bats at seven, or uh, either you just have to change your entire mentality and say, hey, whatever happens, any wicket that falls between the 15th and 17th over, DK is walking in. So even if the first wicket falls, then you send in DK as a finisher, or like, that's a kind of a different way to think about it. But
yeah.
yeah, I don't know where you're right. DK should have played. We missed the finishing kick. I don't know
If
who he plays for.
yeah, if there's less than like 6 overs left, DK just comes in and thrashes it.
Yeah,
There's, I mean, Pandya, DK, Pant just thrash it, and I think we really missed that. So for me, DK should be playing in that 11, irrespective of whatever happens. And if he plays, he takes the gloves, which unfortunately I think means our boy Pant might have to sit out. But at least he's in the squad, which seemed to be not something that may have been happening at one point. But we've talked
agreed.
about we've talked about DK. Now, Ashwin, this is one that I thought was slightly interesting. Deepak Huda. Again, we batted him out of place. Let's say he batted outside his usual position where he bats up the order, 3-4. Did not bowl. Got out twice against Sri Lanka and 4 balls. And people argued, okay, he wasn't batting in his spot. But Ashwin, the whole thing about a flexible lineup is that people can float up and down. It the time we won it, like Dhoni came up above Yuvraj Singh, right? In the 2011 World Cup, Dhoni came in before Yuvraj Singh, before he hit the six sixes as well. And so you've got to have that flexibility. You can bat anywhere. You can't say only bat at three, I only open the batting, I only bat at four. Sky has opened the batting, he's done well. So he didn't do himself any favors. But are you happy with that selection, or would you have preferred someone like a Deepak Chahar being in the 15? Because you've got an Ashwin who can bat a little bit, does a job with the ball. Um, your thoughts on the Deepak Huda question, the Duda question, as Varun would have put it?
It's a dude question. I actually think he's kind of I think he's in there as a backup, if you will. Like, I don't see him starting in this playing 11. And so they're saying, okay, if somebody gets injured, especially if it's somebody like a Hardik who offers you those, 4 overs now. I think Huda's in there kind of as a backup batsman. Shreyas Iyer made the cut for the standby, and he's getting some hate, unfortunately, on social media for making that. I mean, it's a standby, right? It's the next. It's not the 11. It's not the 15. It's that third tier. But I think you had to take one extra batsman as a backup, and I don't think I would have taken Iyer, which leaves me to,
Samson?
yeah, I think I would have picked Huda, just because he's been around the setup more recently. He's been playing more, even though he didn't have a great Asia Cup. He had yes, you can argue he had a good run against Zimbabwe and Ireland and those guys, but when he hits the ball, he looks great with it. So I think I'm okay with Huda. I think, yes, there's a little bit of semantics on should he have made the 15, or should he have been one of the 4 standby players? And I can see that going either way, because for me, the big miss is Deepak Chahar, who gives you a different level of batting at 8. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not unhappy with our 4
Yeah.
quicks, and that's part of why there's no good solution. But yeah, I think I'm okay with Huda's inclusion.
Yeah, I think we're okay with it. I just think that we haven't actually trialed him properly. We haven't bowled him. He's been batted in strange places. He hasn't delivered in those strange places, which I don't think really helps us. But just moving on, okay, the guy that is an absolute certainty in this team is Hardik Pandya, right? Tonks the ball. IPL winning captain. Uh, but when he was the third seamer, he did go for runs. So his role is very much the sixth bowler, Ashwin. I don't think he can be a frontline quick. I don't think he can sort of carry that responsibility. Um, any comments on Hardik Pandya? How important is he going to be in this campaign? How much do India rely on him?
This is where Jadeja's balance just messes up everything, right? We know this, but you can play Jadeja and Hardik at 6 and 7, and then have four out and out bowlers, and you're okay. If you then say Hardik will only play six because he bat at number six, assuming you need 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 to be five different bowlers. If you need five pure bowlers plus Hardik at six, then your batting gets a little short. And so, yeah, I think when Hardik played as the third seamer in one game, he had a bad game. One, maybe two.
Now he
But
played two. He went for 10 and over in those two
yeah,
games.
I still think he's an asset in Australia. I still think they will be pushing him in the nets, pushing him. But anyway, Shaunak has just sent in a comment saying how big a blow is it as Jadeja misses the flight. I think it's huge. That the combination of a lefty, a guy who can bat, and a guy who can bowl 4 overs consistently. Yeah, that's a different comment. But yeah, I think that's what we miss. So I do think Hardik will be pushed to be the third seamer.
Yeah, I think he can only really be the third seamer. I don't think he can be the frontline seamer.
Yeah.
Ashwin, I think we've covered the top half of the squad, so it's probably a good time to take a break. Guys, we will be back straight after this break. You're listening to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Do not go anywhere. And in the meantime, if you can, like and subscribe. Welcome back from that break, and you are still listening to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we haven't actually gone anywhere, so we're just carrying on. Okay, we've talked about Pandya. We've talked a little bit about Akshar. Akshar's been Jadeja's understudy for precisely this kind of situation, Ashwin, isn't he? He did pretty well in the West Indies, finishing off a couple of games with the bat. He's bowled well when Jadeja's been injured. He took those 27 wickets against England in those three test matches while Jadeja was away. But this is his chance to shine, Mr. Patel. I mean, Ashwin, if Jadeja's a 10, what's your rating for Akshar?
7. So he's
70% the cricketer that
yeah
okay.
in T20s. You're saying, or you're
In
saying total?
T20 cricket, yeah. He's
Okay,
he's a
yeah,
Delhi Capital
no,
boy as well.
yeah. I don't think he's seventy
That gives
percent
him
of
an
the
extra
cricketer.
point 0.5.
Maybe. I don't, you would have gone less or more. I'm curious. You got less. Sounds like.
Extra point 0.5.
No. I'm saying less than 70%. 7 out of 10 for you. What is he
No,
for you?
I think he's about 75% the cricketer that Jaddu
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
Um, but he hasn't been given that extended run because Jadeja gets injured, he comes back in. So this is, as I said, his chance to shine, right? It's um, if he plays, he'll be bowling his quota most likely. He'll be batting as well. He can hit some big shots. He runs pretty well between the wickets. He's a good fielder, quick across the turf. So I think if you ever wanted a like for like replacement with whatever, I mean, this is Akshar's time to show us he's our number one left arm um, spinning all rounder. I mean, Krunal, who I'd called an IPL goat, has just dropped off after he fought with Huda. But I
I
mean,
think there are two things quickly about Akshar. One, I, I think the question for the selectors and for the captain and Rohit in particular is, are you so reliant on this structure you've built because of your top four batsmen being locked, because of three of them potentially being slow, etc.? Are you so reliant on that structure that you will take a player that is, call it 70% of Jadeja just because he's like for like? Or do you then change something else up, right? Do you start relying on Huda more with the ball? Do you tell Hardik he has whatever 6 weeks to become the third seamer, and he's going to play that number 7 role? Do you change something else up? That's one. I think the second thing linked a little to what you said about uh, who were we talking. Oh yeah, you're talking about Yuvraj and Rishabh Pant in that context. Akshar Patel can be effective and bowl his 4 overs quickly and be good in the field and make a handy 25-30 with the bat. But when he's not, he looks like a nothing cricketer, right? Like when he's having a bad day where he's going for sixes, that slow left arm, which is true for Jadeja too, right? That slow left arm. That on a bad day, you're like, why do I have this guy in the squad when I've got the depths of Chahal and Bishnoi, and then of course Kuldeep, and this whole long list uh, of leg spinners and off spinners who have more variations. And Jadeja, and this is a hot take, I might get criticism for it, but Jadeja and Akshar both can look like nothing bowlers. Jadeja has found a way to be super effective with it. Akshar is getting there. I don't. The worry is he'll have one bad game. He'll go for three or four, five sixes in an over in the huge Aussie ground, and then everything changes. So that's what
But
I have.
and his batting, do you see India pushing him up the order like they do with Jadeja or not?
Unlikely. I don't unless I
Yeah.
see something magical in the nets. I don't think he has the batting prowess of Jadeja.
Agreed, agreed. Ashwin, now your namesake is in the squad as well. So we've got a question from Kunal Shah. Still banking on Ashwin after all this time. Remember, Ashwin burst onto the scene with the Chennai Super Kings as a T20 specialist. He played the last T20 World Cup as well. He played the Asia Cup as well. Okay, with that selection, how is he going to? My concern really is how is Ashwin going to be in the field on those huge Australian grounds? So talk me through his selection and his fielding.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think I worry a little bit. So it's not a surprise. Okay, let's start with that. I think that when you saw, what was your first reaction when you saw the squad? I think many people's first reaction was like, oh yeah, the
Yeah,
same, right?
yeah,
Different.
exactly the same. A totally safe squad, went for every pick that you would have expected them to go for. There wasn't really much of a discussion. There was chat about Shami and Samson, but I think that was just Twitter doing its Twitter things.
Yeah. So I mean, Ashwin is a smart cricketer. He is he's a thinking cricketer, if you will. He can bat a little bit, and especially now, you don't want to build your 11 based on what happens if we're 15 for three. I'm channeling my inner Varun just because, yeah, when what we will be 15 for three one day, and at that point, you want Ashwin over a Bishnoi or a Chahal or a Kuldeep or anybody else, right? For any of our other spinners, ex Jadeja. So I don't know how much game time Ashwin will get in Australia, given his fitness. I mean, we used to say this in Test cricket: he might get one or two and then realize he's not quite fit enough. So I I don't know how much he'll play. I'm not upset that he's in the squad, which I guess is the theme of what I'm saying. Is that like, I'm happy. All of these guys have earned their call up, right? Did I really think a Kishan or a Samson or a Gill would walk in for a World Cup? I didn't, right? I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm saying I don't think our selectors are going to take such a big, bold move just weeks out of the away from the World Cup. So I'm not hugely surprised about Ashwin. I don't think he's in my let's assume you're playing three quicks and two spinners. I think unquestionably you start with Chahal, right? And then the question mark becomes: is Ashwin your second because he can bat a little at eight, or do you bring in a Bishnoi because he's a little bit of a mystery?
Yeah, that's a good question because we I think all say that Chahal is going to be our number one wristy leg spinner. But Ball in Your Court is written in saying relegating Ravi Bishnoi to the standby list is a defeatist move. Ashwin, what do you think of that?
I mean, I think it's true. I think it's right. Bishnoi played one game. Did he play two? Maybe he definitely played
He was the
at
best
least
bowler
one.
in that game as well.
And he played
The Pakistan
unbelievable,
game.
and he
Yeah.
got dropped, right? And so I think the question is: do you really think about two right arm leggies who both have excellent googlies? Can you play both of them together and give Bishnoi the role to play to say bowl 80% googlies, and then you have a ball that goes away from the left hander, right? So some of it will come down to who we're playing, right? If you're playing a team with a lot of lefties, you might go Chahal and Ashwin. If you're playing a team with a lot of righties like India, you might go Chahal and Bishnoi, but obviously Bishnoi is in the standby list right now, so they'd have to drop
Yeah.
somebody to bring him
Well, they'd have to be injured really or like sick
in.
because you can't just drop someone and bring them in because they're the reserves. They're just there for like a COVID case or like
Right, right.
somebody's broken their leg. It
Or
has to be like they have to be
like the way
out.
Avesh got fever.
Yeah, he was unwell.
Unwell, he got fever. Okay,
I
great.
mean,
Yeah.
he wasn't even on the reserves, man. I mean,
No. Yeah.
that's from being in the reckoning for national cap from going out of the reserve. But the other question that's come in from Ball in Your Court is about Shami, and also we've got a similar question from Shaunak, which says. the squad was predictable, but with glad with Shami being at least in the reserves. Where's all this chatter about Shami being a T20 bowler come from, boss? I know he played the last T20 World Cup, but he got hate in that because he went for runs in one game and then there was a massive, like, crazy thing that went on. But is Shami one of our best T20 bowlers, Ashwin? Really? I mean, I don't know. He seems to go for a lot of runs when he plays T20 cricket, and
So when you think about the quicks, right, I think it's less about just being critical of Shami or looking at him. I think if you look at our four quicks being Bhuvi, Bumrah, Harshal, and Arshdeep, right? So let's go through that in that order and then talk Shami, right? Bumrah, I don't think we waste 10 seconds this show whether he belongs or not, right? Harshal Patel, I think, is our second choice quick bowler right now in T20s, which
oh,
I'm not
I
sure
think
if it
Arshdeep is actually second choice right now, to be
well,
honest.
so let's say before the Asia Cup, Harshal was our
Okay,
second choice, right?
correct. Before
Arshdeep
he got
has
injured.
then Arshdeep has now proven his ability, his smarts. I mean, even in the game we end like the well, which one did we end up? Even in both, I guess, in the Sri Lanka and the Pakistan games, he bowled well, right? Like he kept us alive. Now we didn't give him enough to work with, and so Arshdeep, and then you come back to the same question about our batsman. Like Arshdeep is a lefty quick. How much trouble have we had against lefty quicks? How good have left arm quicks been in the T20 format? So I think when you go through those three, and then you look at Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, who had an outstanding Asia Cup, I would say. I want to look up the stats and see how many wickets, etc.
He
But
took
he,
wickets in the last game, though. Those were quote unquote junk
I mean,
wickets against
sure,
Afghanistan.
but
Like if Kohli got junk century, then those were junk wickets
I
as well.
no, I didn't call it a jug century, but he picked up 11 wickets for in 19 overs, right? That he bowled in across the 5 matches. Right? So he picked up a 4 for and a 5 for. So I'm not. I anyway, not to say Bhuvi necessarily needs to play above the other guys, but when you look at those four, I don't see Shami in the mix, right? Like I don't see Shami is unquestionably one of our first three picks in tests and ODIs, but I don't think he's up there in T20s. So
Okay.
that's my 2 cents.
I am totally on board with that. I think he takes wickets with the new ball, but when he comes back for a second and third spell, he does go for runs. I actually think our best three T20 bowlers that give us the best chance of winning games, boom, amazing up front and at the death, and Harshal and Arshdeep. Those are the top three for me because Bhuvi, yes, he's got a lot of experience. He's taken wickets, but Ashwin, those 19th overs that he's gone for runs, and yes, bowlers go for runs in T20 cricket. You can't, I mean, not everybody is going to bowl like Bumrah or Arshdeep, right? At the end, I just don't think Bhuvi has given us that consistency that he would maybe 4 5 years ago, where he was just nailing Yorkers for Sunrisers Hyderabad one after the other. I just think he has fallen away a little bit on that front. So, are you comfortable with Bhuvi being the pick over Deepak Chahar? That is actually the question for me. It's not Ashdeep versus Shami. It's Deepak Chahar sitting in the reserves while Bhuvi, who's not been that great with the bat either, is in the squad
Yeah, I mean, here's
of
the thing,
15.
right? I I look at the Asia Cup numbers and I see that Bhovi, okay, exclude the Afghanistan match, right? He still he still had a reasonable series. Like I'm looking at the Sri Lanka game we lost, right? Arshdeep went for a lot of runs. Hardik went for a lot of runs. Bhuvi was the most economical of our quicks, which again isn't saying much. It was a bad loss, but was more economical than the other two. And then I think it was the first Pakistan game. He picked up a couple of early wickets. He picked up 4 for 26, right, against Pakistan in the first match of the tournament and stuff. So I just think it's we're a little harsh on him sometimes. Now you come to Chahar and it's more of a balance discussion, and the balance becomes like, yes, Chahar, if you want to play Hardik at 6, maybe Chahar could bat at 7. Then you have 6 clear bowling options, right? So in a non-Jadeja world, I think that's why for me, I think Deepak Chahar is the guy I'm missing, less than saying Bhuvi doesn't deserve to be in the 11.
Okay. Arshdeep, let's talk quickly through him, right? Like, he obviously had a horror game against Pakistan. Well, horror drop catch against Pakistan. Varun talked about him smiling after dropping that catch, which was like in his mind. He got a lot of flack on social media, etc., etc. But for him to come back and bowl that over against Sri Lanka, nearly winning us the game, and remember, it was only because Rishabh Pant missed the stumps from like 2 meters away that we went on and lost that game. Um, is Arshdeep in your starting 11? And does he bring that left arm seam that we've been lacking since Zahir Khan retired and Ashish Nehra, Zahir Khan, RP Singh? Do we need that variety? And does that give him the edge over somebody like a Harshal? Because initially I thought Harshal and Arshdeep were fighting for the same spot. I now feel that Arshdeep and Bhuvi are fighting for
Mhm.
one spot. Um, but your
And
thoughts?
I guess we haven't talked about is Harshal can bat a bit too,
Yes,
right?
he can
So
bat a bit.
we've been talking about all the other batters, but yes. Um, let's see. I guess the question is, and I'm going to ask it back to you as well. But who are your starting? I'm looking at your what you
I
released, right?
I
It sounds
sent
like you would
my
start
my top 11. I sent you my
Bumrah,
top
Arshdeep.
11.
Yeah, so Bumrah, Harshal, and Arshdeep, right?
Yeah,
Are your three quicks, and then you
yeah.
have Hardik rounding out the fourth, and Chahal and Akshar. For me, Bumrah, no question. Harshal, no question. So I think you decide again on on Bhuvi versus Arshdeep based on who the opposition is and how they're looking in the nets, right? So your third quick is going to be: do you need a left? Like, are the top order batsmen from I don't know New Zealand more susceptible to a left arm quick? And what is Arshdeep's record against them in IPL games and stuff? So I think that's where your point they're fighting for one spot.
Yeah, and the grounds are big. So I think Harshal is going to be a massive, massive asset to Team India because he'll bowl those dipping
He'll
off
he'll
cutters and
once in a while bowl a variation that's a little quick.
that's yeah, that's 120 kilometers per hour, but otherwise it'll all be
No,
like
but
110,
yeah, his fast ball is his
105.
variation. He's not his slower ball is not a variation anymore.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're reasonably happy with it. We seem to be unsurprised by it. But Ashwin, what are the weaknesses of this squad? Before, I mean, we're nearly up to 40 minutes. So I want to wrap up with what are the pros and cons, and where do you see this squad struggling? Where would you put India in the reckoning for the T20 World Cup? I mean, honestly, every time we say they're favorites, they just get thrashed. So, and the only time we were underdogs, we won the damn thing. So let's be realistic in our assessment of matters. Oh, and also wait, we got a great question in.
I
Before you
think
answer that,
you should take this one. I don't want to take
is
it.
Lord Shardul forgotten now? Sai Vasanji has written, Ashwin, how have we forgotten about Shardul Thakur who can bat, bowl, and pretty much do anything under the sun? Is he a specialist test cricketer now?
I mean, that's the craziest thought too, right? Like, look, yeah, he's Shardul has earned his way into being one of the first five picks from a Test cricket standpoint. As we go through the list, I'm not. Shardul's an outstanding, hardworking cricketer, all those things. But Does he really rank for anybody above Bhuvi, Bumrah, Harshal, Arshdeep as your first, and then Deepak
Yeah.
Chahar?
No, he doesn't.
I
It's
I don't
it's a
think so.
joke question, I think.
So,
Which
so it's no. The thing is, these are all unbelievably talented cricketers, all
yeah,
of who have done well. We just have this unbelievable depth in our nation right now, as so that's what just makes it hard. You have these guys who say they're incredible cricketers, would have walked into any other country,
yeah.
or not any, but many other countries, but just don't make the top 15 for India, and that's the challenge of playing for Team India now.
I want to ask you actually before we go to the pros and cons and your ranking. Umran Malik, Harbhajan Singh has been going wild on Twitter asking for 150 kilometers per hour bowler. No love for Umran, not even in the discussion anymore on those bouncy Australian tracks. That could have been an X Factor pick, like the Jogi Sharma of 2007.
Man, I just think he needs to do a little more domestically, right? Do we? I think the reality is we all of us saw Joginder Sharma bowling that last over was crazy,
Mm.
right? But NMS knew better. So unless there's something
MS always knows
our
better.
MS always
Like
knows
how
better.
to run to the stumps and break the stumps and win the game, but
Well, I
we
think
won't
he
get
was
into that.
watching some US Open
Yeah.
tennis this past week. But
Yeah,
anyway,
he watched the one that took it deep into like 2:30 at
oh,
night.
was he at that one? That's
He was at
amazing.
that one.
That's
Final
perfect.
over
That's
finish.
it's typical MS. But I I mean, Umran Malik is a talent for the future, no doubt. I don't quite think he's done enough yet. Like being able to hit 150 alone doesn't mean anything, right? I don't think he's quite done just enough yet to be in the consideration set for Team India. I think I've said this again. I'll repeat myself, but after the World Cup, I don't think we will win, and this is going to be controversial, but I don't think we have the 11 to win, and that is going to cause us to to remodel, redo our thinking again completely. And I think you might even get to moments where Bumrahs of the world start focusing on red ball and 50 over cricket, and then you bring a completely different crop. Like, and by the way, this is linked to the broader discussions on do you have simultaneous series going on where you have a India test team playing in one part of the world and a T20 team playing in another part of the world. So the combination of all those things, I think players like Umran and Ishan Kishan and Samson and all these guys get a look after the World Cup, but I don't think it happens now.
And I think you're absolutely right, because the only time we've won the 2007 World Cup, T20 World Cup, is when the seniors,
They didn't play.
they took a rest,
Yeah.
right? And you had Rohit Sharma, you had Gautam Gambhir, who was like the senior statesman at like age 27 or something. You had Dinesh Karthik, you had Yuvraj Singh, you had MS Dhoni captaining. It was just a fresh feel to everything. And I think the problem, I mean, it's a good squad. And if they come together, I mean, Australia has just won the T20 World Cup, right? Who knows? You play good cricket for 4 or 5 weeks, you might win it. But there needs to be a rethink of how we play T20 cricket. 2 years ago, we put out an episode saying, why is India so bad at T20 cricket? That still
Still
hasn't
happening.
changed.
It's still happening. We couldn't, like, we had all planned our whole Sundays around the final, and then nobody thought about, not only would we not make it, but then Sri Lanka would go on to win the whole thing,
Yeah,
which again,
and what a
huge
great
kudos.
story that is as
Yeah.
well. And I mean, I would love to talk more about that in a future episode, and we'll talk more about it with when we talk on future episodes of Edges and Sledges. But I mean, there's going to be a reset. There's going to be a refresh. Until then, guys, I think we should just enjoy what we're seeing. We're seeing a little bit of a resurgence of Kohli. We're seeing Rohit doing his thing. We're seeing KL, and who knows, if it all comes together, we might we might do well. But I wouldn't put us as favorites for this one. I think we were saying that we were favorites last year because we played in the UAE. We knew the conditions. We didn't even qualify for the for the knockout phase, which was pretty appalling. And with T20 cricket, anything can happen, right? I mean, always remember that last over from Joginder Sharma. Remember the bowl out. Strange things happen in T20 cricket. So Australia
I,
won the last one and gone.
yeah, I was just checking the Australia T20s that start a week from tomorrow at the time of recording this, and it looks like everybody who's in our squad I think it's the exact same squad, plus they could pick extra, so they've got Shami and Chahar and stuff. So I think that's good. Oh no, Arshdeep doesn't seem like he's playing, which is interesting.
Rest must be rotation.
So I think that's another key, right? Like you got 3 T20s against Australia. I think then they're playing South Africa after that. Like, yes, they're all at home, but you'll at least be able to.
Bilateral में मार के क्या कर रहे हैं यार? We
Hey,
win
that's how.
every
But
bilateral series
no,
because
no. I'm just
we're
talking
not
about
used to
figuring.
playing
I think it's
different
just. I'm
teams
just
on
talking
different
about
days.
figuring out team combinations, right? Like just you have these 6 matches left. I think it is 3 T20s against Australia, 3 South Africa, and that's it. Then you fly to Australia. So anyway, I think it'll be good. I'm glad like the Kohlis and Rohits of the world are not resting because they need the game time.
And the one more thing I just wanted to add was, one of the thoughts I had was, we don't seem to do well in multilateral tournaments because we don't play tri-series and quadrangular series and things like the Asia Cup often enough. We just keep playing those bilateral series where by the third game you figured out the opposition. So you then bring your A game and you win that. You're not playing a different team every day. And we won the first 2 games against Pakistan and Hong Kong. But then we played Pakistan again. We lost that game, and then we lost to Sri Lanka. And it was done. The tournament was over, right? Because you're not used to we didn't play New Zealand at all in that 2019 World Cup, and they were the only ones to dump us out in the semi-final, right? So I think this is actually been built up by the profusion of bilateral Paytm trophies, which are probably now Mastercard trophies or something else. I don't know. Speaking of trophies, Aaron Finch retired, so congratulations from ODI. So congratulations to him. There's lots more cricket news, I'm sure, but guys, I think it's probably a good time to end this episode. Thank you all for joining. If you're watching on YouTube, please please subscribe, tell people about the show. We're, I think, at 950 subscribers, so that's pretty good news for a channel that we only revived recently.
Let's get us to that 1,000, guys. Come on, somebody.
Let's do it.
Let's get us to 1,000.
Yeah, let's do it, guys. And follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're at One Tip One Hand, the number one tip, the number one hand. And you leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. So until next week, where I'm sure there'll be much more cricket to talk about. Take care, guys, and we will see you then. Ashwin, thanks for joining me, man. Pleasure as always.
Thank you. Great chat. What a day. I mean, I thought we'd have to relive the negativity of the Asia Cup, but we were allowed to forget it and talk about the future in the squad. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, and I'm off to watch a rerun of the Kohli 100 again.
Me
Just
too, man. That's what I'm
I'll
going to
watch
do.
it once a day.
Sounds
Anyway,
great.
guys, take care. See you, man, Ashwin.